The reason why I choose bison or some ground meat, is because easier to chew. If I eat steak as well, but not as often. In the strongman days, I would eat up to 10,000 calories every single day. Obviously now when I'm doing boxing, my diet has changed a lot.
What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be talking about how Hafthor Bjornsson's diet has changed from strongman to boxer. So he just ended up beating Eddie Hall in the boxing match by unanimous decision. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below as far as how the match was. Were you entertained? Did you think it was worthwhile? Do you think that either of them, should have approached things differently? All the comments help the algorithm, much appreciated. So anyways, his diet, he's obviously slimmed down quite tremendously in the past, not that long of a period of time. Like the guy was not that long ago a massive fucking behemoth of a human. Like this is in 2020, strongman diet, full day of eating, 10,000 calories per day, Arnold prep. Look at this shit, dude. He has like 6 monster mashes here, two oranges, bananas. He's got his like rain shake of something. So the reason I like these videos is they give a lot of insight into what the most elite athletes, celebrities, etc. are doing for their diet, what they deem to be appropriate to literally put into their mouth to support their lifestyle. Because again, you are what you eat is sort of a true saying, and individuals who fuel with shitty food end up, feeling crappy and not performing well. So I'm always very, very curious to see what like the highest tier individuals are doing. And Hafthor is an individual who actually previously followed the vertical diet. So this is a diet that I became very, very interested in a few years ago. This was a seminar that Stan Efferding did at Thor's Power Gym. He got over almost 7 million views, where he basically breaks down in elaborate detail basics behind nutrition, as well as all of the fundamental principles that support the reasons why he had elite strength athletes on certain diet practices. So he had, Hafthor eating that way, he had Brian Shaw eating that way, he had Larry Wheels eating that way. He has a bunch of high tier, top tier strength athletes that at the peak of their competitive careers were following this diet model, and it kind of a lot of the things he said made a lot of sense to me. So I started to adopt a lot of the principles from the vertical diet, and I actually started my own log way back in 2018, I believe. So this was my vertical diet log, introduction, overview, goals, week 1 update, CPAP stuff, like Stan is a big proponent of getting a sleep study done, getting a CPAP if warranted. Because again, most guys that are not overweight just by fat, but even if you're muscular, the likelihood is very, very high that you have some, or I don't know if it's very, very high, but there's definitely a high risk of some sort of like structural inhibition of your airway while you're sleeping. Like the bigger your neck gets, the more it sort of just like collapses into itself while you're sleeping and kind of like constricts that air. Like it's not just like an electrical issue from your brain, like stopping you from breathing in your sleep. Some people do have that, but more often than not, seemingly it is, especially in the fitness industry, big guys with big necks that end up inhibiting their airways through just like lying down. Like for me, whenever I would fall asleep at my computer, I would not apnea. I would sit there like this and I would not apnea, but I noticed that the more flat I lay, the more likelihood is for my tongue to like fall back into my throat and for my, just inhibition of my airway in general. So CPAP, definitely something to look into if you are an individual who has a bigger than average stature, or you've noticed, your sleep is poor quality. Even when you get 8 hours, you feel sluggish throughout the day. You're falling asleep in class or at work or whatever. Like for me, at my peak body weight, I don't remember what I was, like 250, 260 or something. And when I was in university class, even after a full night of sleep, I would literally sit down within like 5 minutes, fall asleep. I was like, they thought I was like the shittiest student, but I just like couldn't stay awake. So it almost took the worst dirty bulk of my life to find out I had sleep apnea, which is a blessing in disguise. So vertical diet log 2, week 2 and 3. I got my blood work throughout this too. This was actually a full day of eating, cholesterol skyrocketing from eggs and red meat, how my blood work responded to adding in, a pound of red meat a day and eggs. Inflammation levels, when I was eating that much ground bison per day, I was having a pound of ground bison per day at that time. And then my overall review of the diet model and, you know, what I thought about it. I still do follow principles of it to this day, and this is why I link it in my video descriptions as the diet model I would recommend for newbies who are getting into fitness and bodybuilding, or just gaining muscle and strength in general, and want to figure out a way to not only hit their micro and macronutrient needs, but do it in a way that actually supports, you know, health as well, and hits micronutrient needs. Isn't just about hitting your protein and your total calories per day, because that's what a lot of cookie cutter influencers sell in their, you know, cookie cutter plans and, you know, diet books and shit like that. It's just basically like, hit your calories, hit your protein, then like whatever. But this is like actually stuff to support high quality sleep, gut health, micronutrient intake, thyroid health, etc. It is mindful of electrolyte balance, stuff like this for athletes that is very, very critical to know, in my opinion. And it also breaks down example diets that you can kind of like plug and play and then tweak as needed for your own personal needs. I also had FPS Russia do this diet model. So this is how the diet he mutated on during that 11 months where he turned from a fat slob into like a diced fucking freak. And we went over it in the PKA 555 podcast, Kyle's Transformation. He did it on TRT, by the way, but the diet model was the vertical diet basis that I designed for him. And this fuck your protein powder video, I guess I must have talked about it in there too. The log is also on my website back when I used to write written articles, so if you want to check that out. But anyways, that is the diet model that, you know, it inspired me to dig into micronutrient intake, you know, minerals and stuff for the first time, because I used to be the standard bro, hit my protein intake and that's all I give a shit about mentality every single day. I literally never looked at micronutrients or anything like that. But Stan sort of like shifted my mentality on that quite a bit. So anyways, this is Hafthor's diet he used to have. You can see these are definitely vertical diet based meals, because these are monster mashes, presumably, which is like essentially, you know, rice and bison, or, you know, some sort of red meat, you know, crushed up and mixed up. And you have, you know, your oranges and whatnot. Like these are all kind of like go-to staples in the vertical diet. So anyways, that is what he used to do. And now he's way smaller and everything is potentially much different. So we're going to be getting into exactly what has changed.
My name is Hafthor Bjornsson. I've been a professional strongman for more than a decade, actor, and now I'm doing boxing. I'm gonna walk you guys through a full day of eating. In the strongman days, I would eat up to 10,000 calories every single day. Obviously now when I'm doing boxing, my diet has changed a lot.
So the funny thing is when individuals who are like, you know, 150 pounds are like, I'm a hard gainer, I eat like 8,000 to 10,000 calories. It's like, no, this is 10,000 calories. And again, this is not showing like, you know, I'm sure when you dig into this video, he shows like it's 34 minutes of fucking eating and his entire day essentially. But you imagine this individual needs 10,000 calories. Like, no, the average, you know, hard gainer doesn't need 10,000, which is, it's baffling how many times I've heard over the years, like, you have no idea how hard it is to gain weight. Which it can be for somebody like this, I imagine. But I mean, for, you know, the average human, no, you don't need fucking 10,000 calories.
Eat a lot of rice, a lot of potatoes, fatty meat like ribeye steaks, carrots, peppers, chicken stock in my meals. I would have spinach sometimes with my meals, and that was my meals basically.
Bone broth, chicken stock, also things that I would definitely recommend looking into for adding into your diet. This is something that I used to drink. I kind of just like cook my rice in it now, to be honest, and it's way better than using water in my rice cooker, in my opinion. But this is a good way to get in glycine needs.
In the mornings, I would usually have 6 eggs and 6 slices of bacon, orange juice, and obviously drink a lot of water. Now, when I'm doing boxing, my meals are more specific. In the mornings, I have 8 ounces of beef tenderloin, so more of a leaner meat, not as fatty. And then I'll have 2 whole eggs, 110 grams of oatmeal, 150 grams of berries, 1.
So you mentioned here how the steak is leaner, then it's not as fatty of a cut. Like, what do you say here?
Beef tenderloin, so more of a leaner meat, not as fatty.
So yeah, in the past, you know, having something ground up, like I said, is gonna be, you know, easier to manage when you're like consuming copious amounts of calories, but having a leaner steak is going to be more satiating for having the same like volume of food, essentially visually, you know, cosmetically appealing and actual like size of amount of food you're chewing and whatnot. And it's going to be, less fat dense. You have more calories to allocate to other things. But ultimately, I think the main difference between what he's doing now in the vertical diet in the past, it was basically just like, what's the number one way to maximize calorie intake whilst not causing distress of the GI, whereas this is more like what can satisfy him and be calorie mindful while like getting leaner, more athletic, rather than strictly focusing on like maximizing strength metrics and size.
And then I'll have 2 whole eggs, 110 grams of oatmeal, 150 grams of berries, 1 glass of orange juice. That's my breakfast. Meal number 2, 8 ounces again of beef tenderloin, 100 grams of zucchini, spinach, or any other types of greens with rice. The rice amount changes depending on how I feel, depending on how I'm performing, but lately I've been eating roughly 140 grams of rice a day with each meal.
So this is like the foundation of the carbohydrate intake of the vertical diet, mainly because of, it's not necessarily driving micronutrient intake, it's more so supporting a well-tolerated carb source for fuel. And then the actual micros are derived from your high quality red meats, and some of the other random stuff you would get through, vegetables, like having carrots, stuff like that, is going to drive your macros and your actual health processes and whatnot. But the carbs are like, brain fuel, fucking like working out fuel, supporting, insulinogenic cascades, etc. And it just seems to be like really well assimilated carbohydrate source that most people can tolerate well.
Meal number 3 is cod usually, and that's same amount, 8 ounces with roughly 300 grams of potatoes and again 100 grams of greens. Meal number 4, I'll have 8 ounces of salmon with 140 grams of rice and 100 grams of greens as well. My last meal of the day is in the evenings usually, and then I'll have Thor skyr, which is similar to Greek yogurt but just better, high in protein, probiotics, which is good for your gut health. I'll have 100 grams of berries with it and 30 grams of nut butter as well. It tastes definitely like a dessert, but it's super healthy and super good for you. I mean, I love ice cream, I won't lie. We have a thing called in Iceland called bragðarefur. It's ice cream mixed with 3 candies and all mixed together. I really like
Candy is not high in protein, in case you didn't fucking know.
that. On a cheat day, I would eat anything that my stomach desires. Sometimes it's ice cream, sometimes pizza, sometimes burgers.
Dude, the B-roll in these videos is always like makes you want to have a cheat day. It's brutal.
Sometimes sushi, wherever I desire, I eat. Alright guys, that was a full day of eating with myself. You guys can watch the fight against me and Eddie Hall March 19th.
Okay, so that was a pretty to the point summation. I was hoping to see some macro breakdowns, but obviously a far cry from what his diet model was before, and he's clearly reflected that on the lean athletic look of his physique now. I think he looks much healthier. He looks he's obviously being mindful of not just athletic performance, but probably what's going to give you the most longevity as well. Because again, you can only maintain that kind of a body mass for what period of time, like how many bodybuilders do we see dropping in their 40s trying to sustain an absurd level of mass. And this is like next level, even though he doesn't look like a bodybuilder necessarily, the amount of mass on his frame and the amount of muscle he has to support is like way bigger than a shit ton more than even a top bodybuilder who otherwise there are so many that dropped in their 40s as a result of obviously different factors compound the issue, but ultimately it looks like one of the main cardiovascular stressors is this trying to maintain such an elevated body weight for a period of time that is simply not sustainable for the majority of people. And for him being such a tall guy, being such a massive guy, like this kind of a step backwards is definitely, I think, commendable. Because again, you know, to watch your body kind of like strip down so much size when you otherwise have this like image surrounding you where you're known as like the Mountain from fucking Game of Thrones. You're this larger than life character who's deadlifted, you know, absurd amounts that no one could ever dream of. And then to watch your, you know, strength numbers deteriorate, watch your physique, you know, kind of melt a little bit. Even though he looks better now, in my opinion, it's something that I think takes a certain amount of mental fortitude to get through. Like we've seen some of the most successful examples of this being like Mr. Olympias, like Dorian Yates. You know, if he tried to maintain that kind of a size for, you know, into whatever age he's now, like I'm sure he wouldn't be with us right now. But instead he is a relatively, from what I understand, I think he's a healthy individual who maintains a more balanced, you know, lifestyle, is just on baseline TRT and does like, you know, actual athletics now, and is very, very broad spectrum in what he uses for supporting cardiovascular health and whatnot. And he's no longer trying to push, you know, size to such an extreme at all, really. Like he's like hardly recognizable from when he was in his heyday. And you know, this is kind of a big mental struggle I see a lot of people deal with when they try to, you know, take a step back from the, you know, social media persona. And good for him for Thor to come down that much size, and seems like he is pretty content with how things went. So that's great to see, and it should be interesting to see how things progress. Like he just won the boxing match. Do you guys think he should be continuing with boxing, or what do you think's next? Like I always wonder with these guys when it's like, you know, they're like entertainers sort of, because they don't really put out as much like informative content, even though he easily could. But I mean, they're always looking for like the next big event seemingly, you know, and I always wonder, like, I don't know what that kind of mindset would be, you know, to always be thinking about, you know, what's the next big thing I can fucking put on, and thinking of all extremes of scenarios. You go from strongman to fucking, you know, one of the biggest hit shows of all time to this, you know, boxing, your arch nemesis. Like what the fuck is next? So let me know what you think in the comments down below. All the comments help the algorithm. Much appreciated. Like, subscribe. Check out my blog, moreplacepointates.com. Follow me on Instagram at moreplacepointates, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below, including the diet model that I mentioned multiple times in the video. It's linked down there. If you buy it, help support the channel. I am an affiliate for Stand Effording's vertical diet, and I think it is a good start for newbies or even intermediates who are looking for a way to optimize their micronutrient intake, their health, whilst, you know, maximizing strength and muscle growth, performance metrics essentially. So you can check it out if you're interested. Help support me. Much appreciated if you guys use my link, and anything else I'm associated with, own, or I'm affiliated with in some capacity. It's all in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.